Joined by former Vice President Mike Pence. Mr. Vice President, welcome back to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hey, good to be with you, Hugh. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I want everyone to go to MikePence2024.com if they want to support you, if they want to learn about the campaign. We'll come back to the campaign in a second. But if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Vice President, you and the former president are the only two people running for office who have ever received the Daily Brief, who had all the clearances you could. So I want to ask you three national security questions this morning, beginning with the threat that Vladimir Putin made in the company of Lukashenko, the dictator of Belarus, that any attack on Belarus would be an attack on Russia. And then the Belarusian leader made the claim that the Wagner people in Belarus are wanting to go to Warsaw. What would be the obligations of the United States in the event that Wagner, Belarus, or Russian troops attacked Poland?
Well, there's no question what the obligation would be under Article 5 of the NATO treaty. We'd be required to support Poland. We'd be required to be involved militarily. It's one of the reasons why, look, I've said many times, Joe Biden has done a terrible job explaining what our interest is in Ukraine. He keeps giving these gauzy speeches about democracy, and for all the world, it sounds like another campaign speech. And our interest there, and the reason why we should continue on an increasing basis to give the Ukrainian military what they need to repel the Russian invasion, is because we never want to see the day that the Russian military, whether it's a Wagner group in Belarus or otherwise, crosses the border of a NATO country where our troops would be required to fight. That's how you get peace through strength, is by living out the Reagan doctrine, which always said, if you're willing to fight the communists on your grounds with your soldiers, we'll give you what you need to fight them there, so we don't have to fight them. And yet there are too many voices in our party that are sounding the retreat. They're willing to let Putin keep the land grab that he's made in eastern Ukraine, willing to make promises. I heard my former running mate is announced over the weekend that he's willing to promise that Ukraine will never be in NATO. Look, in my opinion, the only thing Putin will understand is strength and providing those courageous fighters in Ukraine what they need to repel the Russian invasion is the fastest way to security and to preventing the day that American forces are actually required to go into battle in Europe again.
What do you think Lukashenko and Putin are doing here? The Telegraph calls it a setup for a false flag operation, or is it just mind games?
Yeah, I would hardly ever counsel Hugh Hewitt on foreign policy, but you and I both know the only thing you can know for sure about anything coming out of Russia is you don't know for sure.
Okay, well said.
Nothing is as it seems. When you find out that, after Prigozhin, does this supposed, coup against Putin, now we found out in the last week that they apparently met a couple of days later and had a conversation, and the whole thing could have just been a put-up job for Putin to flush out his enemies in his own government. I wouldn't have put it past him. I do like what was once said by another presidential candidate. He said he looked into Putin's eyes and he didn't see his soul. He saw KGB. That's who you're dealing with. And so nothing is as it seems. And in the acolyte state of Belarus, I just wouldn't trust him as far as I could throw him. And that's why we just need to stay strong in this effort and continue to demand that the Biden administration stop dragging their feet on providing arms in Ukraine, which they've been doing for the last year and a half. Give those people what they need. They can win this war and secure the peace of Europe and the security of our country.
Now, Vivek Ramaswamy, who you'll be sharing a stage with on Friday at the Iowa GOP Lincoln Day dinner, and with all the other candidates are going to have their speeches in Iowa. Vivek was throwing shade on NATO this weekend on Fox News Sunday. Meanwhile, the U.S. and 13 allies were holding a record-setting military exercise in Australia. It seems to me that this might be a time for us to expand our alliances, Mr. Vice President, not sever them.
Well, we ought to be strengthening our alliances. The last thing that we ought to do is try and secure peace in Ukraine by rewarding Vladimir Putin's, naked and brutal invasion into that country by giving him the land and giving him promises never to have Ukraine be a part of NATO. Look, and this has everything to do with the wider world, Hugh. I mean, there's no question in my mind that if we end up capitulating to Putin's aggression, that will only embolden President Xi in his military ambitions in the Asia Pacific. And I just think this is one of those moments where, we learned hard lessons in the first half of the 20th century where America, we thought we could hang back. We thought we could hang back within our borders and watch as the world it became, more unstable and unfurled. And we learned hard lessons then having to come into the fight, both in World War I and especially in World War II. And we won those fights for freedom, but we've secured the peace now for three quarters of a century because we've been willing to stand strong. We've been willing to be the arsenal of democracy. And if I'm president of the United States, I promise you, we're gonna live out that commitment of being leader of the free world. And let me also say, I had a sporting debate on stage about a week or so with a former Fox News host that got some play on the internet. I just don't think we have to choose between solving problems here at home, which is the economy that's failing, the border crisis, the crisis in energy, the crime wave in our cities. I don't think we have to choose between solving problems here at home and being the leader of the free world. We can do both, and anybody who says we can't has a pretty small view of the greatest nation on earth.
Now, Mr. Vice President, I'm playing rapid fire national security, but a lot happened this weekend. Right now, they are voting in the Israeli Knesset on the reform of the Israeli Supreme Court. Got nothing to do with America. It's an internal Israeli domestic issue. Yesterday, President Biden told Israel to stop, slow down, and not do that. And Tom Friedman wrote one of the most extraordinary columns I've ever read in the New York Times, telling the president, it's addressed to Dear President Biden, that the October 1973 intervention by Richard Nixon to save Israel is what he's facing right now. He has to save Israel by getting involved, by speaking the truth. What do you make of the intervention of an American president into the internal domestic politics and policy and judiciary of an ally?
Look, I said many times, and I was at Christians United for Israel a week ago, Hugh, and I was honored to receive some recognition, their Defender of Israel award. I was humbled by that. Look, I was a part of the most pro-Israel administration in American history, I always would say. And I will tell you, if I'm president of the United States, if the world knows nothing else, the world will know this. America stands with Israel. And this preoccupation of Democrats, which literally goes back, decades, of trying to micromanage what's happening in the domestic politics in Israel is wrongheaded, and it undermines a clear message to one of the most dangerous parts of the world of our commitment to our most cherished ally. I reject it categorically. I'm a great admirer of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He's absolutely determined to see this court reform through, and I think we ought to let Israel be Israel. Let them sort these things out domestically, and our position should just be to always give them what they need to defend themselves by themselves, and to make it clear in the region and in the world that America stands with Israel. Period. Paragraph.
Okay, on that paragraph, let's turn to the campaign in 3 or 4 minutes we have left, Mr. Vice President. Mike Pence, 2024. Dana Bash asked you yesterday, and you said you're getting there. You're not at 40,000 yet. Right. Where is most of your support coming from, and where do you want it to come from?
Well, we're just really. I'm very humbled by the fact that we easily cleared the requirement of being a certain number in the polls. I mean, for millions of Americans, I'm their first choice for president, and so we easily cleared the threshold along with, I guess, a half a dozen others. But we haven't yet gotten to 40,000 individual donors. We're working literally around the clock for that. People can go, as you've kindly said, to MikePence2024.com. If they want someone who's been fighting in the conservative movement for the last 30 years, if they want someone who's not just was part of a conservative administration and proud of the record that we created, but also was a governor of a state that cut taxes and created record employment before I left, and also was, as you know, Hugh, when we first met, I was a House conservative leader before that was cool. I mean, I was the leader of the Republican Study Committee, the largest conservative caucus in the Congress. If people are looking for that level of experience for principled conservative leadership on the stage in that debate in 1 month, they can go to MikePence2024.com, even give $1 and do their part to get us there. And I'm confident we'll get there, but we're not taking anything for granted because I think the stakes are too high. And I really do believe that it's absolutely essential that we keep our party on that time-honored path of American leadership at home and abroad, of commitment to conservative principles and policies. I'll be that voice in this party, and I'm looking forward to being that voice on that debate stage in a month.
Mr. Vice President, thank you for joining me this morning, making time. Interview with Dana yesterday was pretty interesting. I'll be playing it in the after show today, and I appreciate your making time this morning. MikePence2024.com. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Hugh. Always great to be on.
Thank you. Mollie Hemingway of Fox News and The Federalist. Good morning, Mollie, and good Monday to you.
Good morning. Great to be here with you.
Did you go to see either Barbie or Oppenheimer, or Barbieheimer as it's being called by the tabs today?
I did. Well, Christopher Nolan is my favorite director. I actually went to see Barbie for other reasons, and it was something.
Well, tell me about that, because I got the grandkids with me, and I put the big veto on Barbie, even for an 11-year-old. I didn't want any part of it. What do you think?
Oh, I think that would be wise. My one big regret about it is that it kind of introduces concepts of anti-womanhood to a younger crowd. You know, like, I love being female. I love that my parents made me feel like it was a great thing to be a girl. And it just has this aspect of it where it acts like being a woman is awful and impossible. It actually says being a woman is impossible. And I just don't like to introduce those concepts. And so one of the girls I was with was 14, and I don't think she'd ever even encountered that because of the way she's been raised until that movie. And so, but I'm not completely criticizing it. It was a beautifully done film. It is accidentally anti-feminist. I mean, I even was talking with her about it. It made her realize that a lot of feminism is about taking the joy out of life. And I think that's a wonderful thing for someone to learn, because I want her to be, I want all girls to be happy being girls. So, I don't want to be too critical. It just is definitely kind of lame in parts.
And the reviews I read said it introduces politics into a Barbie narrative. And so I thought it was just going to be a funny movie, but it's not. I read the reviews on that before I take a grandkid anywhere. So that's a no. Oppenheimer, though, I can't wait to see. I'm not going to see it with kids, but it's got a role for Roger Robinette, the first judge I clerked for on the D.C. Circuit, who was one of the prosecutors of Oppenheimer. So I'm very interested to see how he's cast. What do you think about Christopher Nolan generally?
I've always enjoyed his movies. I like his discussions of time. I think Interstellar is just amazing, but I've liked, a lot of them going, Memento and earlier. I love his use of music too. Like in Interstellar, one of the main parts I feel like is played by an organ. The music is always such a key part, and it is integrated in a way that is meaningful. And so I very much enjoy him. So I will definitely be going to see it, even though I've read David Harsanyi, my colleague's stuff on Oppenheimer and the dangers of glorifying a communist and whatnot.
Right, he's a fellow traveler at a minimum. And Roger Robb was always proud of his work on that. But I still want to see a Nolan movie on Oppenheimer. Mollie, let's turn to the two big issues, what I'm going to ask the Vice President about. First of all, the dictator of Belarus, Lukashenko, said that he's trying to keep the Wagner group from attacking to Warsaw. And Putin is warning of Poland's plan to attack Belarus. What would your reaction be to any incursion into Poland by Wagner or Belarus or Russian forces?
Well, it would be it would be a horrific thing, but I think one thing we've learned about this war is that Russia and its affiliated groups, like the Wagner Group, had overestimated their capabilities. It would be extremely unlikely and unwise to invade Poland, given given the European construct there. So I don't really see that as happening. Now, having said that, I do think all the NATO-affiliated countries should be very careful on how they don't move in a way to escalate any conflict here and make it worse than it already is.
We've got American troops in Poland, and I think we are obliged by NATO Article 5. I'm going to confirm this with the Vice President. Even if mercenaries attack a country, just like the jihadists attacked the United States and all of our NATO allies came to our aid, we ought to come to the aid of Poland if that were to happen. And I think being clear about that deters it.
Well, two things. You'd want to make sure everyone knows the Wagner Group is controlled by the Russians, so it's a distinction without a difference perhaps there. But you'd have to make sure. There's been a lot of misinformation and disinformation in this war, and a lot of attempts to get people more involved. You've had stray attacks being regarded as planned when they weren't, just as an attempt, or people blaming Russia for things that later turned out maybe weren't Russia, all clearly an attempt to exacerbate the conflict. The other thing about Article 5 is that, that's why it's so serious when countries enter. We are saying, if you attack this country, it's like you attacked Nebraska, and we're going to come after you. It's a very serious thing to form an alliance. But Article 5 still says that this is how, Congress decides. Article 5 means for us that not that it's an automatic entry, but that Congress would have to debate and decide to go to full war.
Okay, I will ask the Vice President about that. Now I want to turn to Israel, where they are voting on the reasonability standard, revoking it basically or altering it. And I don't have opinions on domestic issues in other countries. I do follow their constitutional law debates for comparative constitutional law reasons. I am astonished that Joe Biden intervened in a domestic political dispute in Israel that has nothing to do with us. And that Tom Friedman wrote a column yesterday saying, you're the only one who can save Israel today like Nixon did 50 years ago in the Yom Kippur War. What is up with these people? Not the Israelis. They can have their own debate and come to their own resolution via democratically elected representatives. It's controversial. It's hot. But what in the world does Biden think he's doing here?
I mean, I'm not astonished because it seems like the type of thing that he would do, getting involved in a weird way on a domestic political issue. The situation in Israel is really important. I mean, the way that they have renegade courts has caused major problems. It is a dispute worth having, even if, regardless of how it turns out. But I think that Biden tends to view countries as vassal states and that he can control them. I mean, he's very supportive of how we handled Ukraine in that matter. I think he thinks that because of aid that we give to Israel, that we get a say in how they run their country. It's not how diplomacy should work, and it doesn't lead to strong situations in the aftermath, but I'm not surprised.
He rejected the advice of his Secretary of Defense to name a new CNO, Admiral Paparo, I believe, in favor of another admiral, and I'm sure it'll be fine for the Navy, but what do you think it was the first woman CNO, first woman member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. What do you think about that decision?
I don't know enough about it to say, but I do, it does remind me of also this situation. I think you have been opposed to the Tommy Tuberville hold on military advancements, but I keep thinking, Joe Biden could stop this at the drop of a hat by just removing his introduction of politics into the military with the abortion funding that has never been there, and he could make it all go away very, very quickly, and he should be pressured to do so if he would just stop turning our military into this social project to advance, abortion and radical trans ideology.
Yeah, we can hold two thoughts. Lloyd Austin was very wrong to do that. I think it's illegal under the Hyde Amendment, but the people that are being punished for Lloyd Austin and Joe Biden's policy are career colonels, captains, and admirals and generals, everyone promoting up. And the impact on the military is devastating. I was talking to a career naval officer yesterday about a friend of his who's got a star and is supposed to do a year-long deployment. That's a tough deployment. I'm not going to say where it is. It's going to be a very hard deployment. He doesn't even get to start it until people can move, and they can't move until people promote. It's going to be a fiasco in the career military for years to come, Molly. And I don't believe Tuberville knows what he's doing, actually.
I was talking to someone else whose dad was affected by this as well. But, this is why you should resolve it as quickly as possible. And the way to resolve it is to stop doing the awful thing. And I think that people should pressure Biden to back off from this, because likewise, if you want to talk about lifelong problems, what they're doing with the radical trans ideology, with the abortion funding, that will be impossible to get rid of if you don't get rid of it on the front end. And
the analogy, and I haven't thought this through, radical trans ideology, if you wanted to, it'd be like holding up the appointment of the head of a medical center that has nothing to do with trans issues. It just had nothing to do with it. And it's like shooting at every target in the room. I want to give you the last word. I really think we've got to talk to the senator from Alabama. And there's a reason other Republicans aren't being very vocal in support of him. Some are going through the pro forma stuff. But they know, I don't think he knows what he's doing to people. The minimum number of years in uniform that someone has to be affected by this is 22. And so and he's done it to 270 people with 22 years of service in the United States military. I do not understand it.
You allow this stuff to take over, we won't even have a military. We'll certainly not have a prepared fighting force if we allow the left to keep attacking.
Well, we're getting there more quickly if we do not, if we lose our best people and we don't move them into the jobs, we will lose our best people. It's truly one guy's opinion on how to fix a problem, and if all you got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail time. Mollie Hemingway, MZ Hemingway on X, by the way, not Twitter anymore. MZ Hemingway on X. We'll talk about that next week. Welcome back, America. Time for the Yinzer Report. Salena Zito. Good morning, Salena. How are you?
Good morning, sunshine. How are you?
Good. Where are you? That's a very funny wall.
I'm in my kitchen, but they're doing work around the house, so this is the only wall you get.
Okay. Salena, you ever been to Put-in Bay on your reporting travels?
I didn't hear you. Sorry.
Have you ever been to Put-in Bay on Lake Erie up near Sandusky in your travels around the Buckeye State?
Absolutely. Near Sandusky.
Yeah, they had a 19,000 person crowd. I just got a text from one of my pals in Ohio. SWAT team members from 3 counties had to deploy to Put-in Bay as 19,000 people converged on the village's downtown area. It was quite the rowdy weekend at Put-in Bay, but I've only been there twice. I can't imagine it as being a party scene. Can you?
No, Put-in Bay is a pretty chill, laid back, kind of fun town. It's a summer place where people go fishing, go swimming, and just to enjoy the lake. Lots of old Victorian homes around there. So it doesn't seem like the traditional atmosphere you find in Put-in Bay. Was there a festival?
I don't know. Just all I know is SWAT teams and 19,000 people. So you're the close on hand reporter. I give that to you. I want your comments, Salena, on the 2 polls that Fox News published yesterday. In Iowa, Donald Trump 46, Ron DeSantis 16, Tim Scott 11. In South Carolina, Donald Trump 48, Nikki Haley 14, Ron DeSantis 13, Tim Scott 10. What do you think of those 2? Iowa and South Carolina.
I think that's what's happening now. And I don't think that when we go into September that's what will be happening. I think people, as you know, are not as obsessed with this as we are. They're not really paying attention. They're in the middle of their summer. And also, a lot of people are just like, I can't have presidential politics every day of my life for 4 years. I'm just checked out. And a lot of people are like, I know what I know. This is how I feel now. But as we know, things dramatically change. At this time in 2004, all we were talking about was Howard Dean. That was it. Howard Dean all the time. In 2008, all we were talking about was Hillary Clinton. And so, I mean, it wasn't until August of 2007, I should say 2007, not 2008. August of 2007, I remember distinctly writing a story that Mike Huckabee and Barack Obama were these sort of insurgent candidates, and they tell us a lot about the direction of the party. Both, and that was after I left Iowa. Both of them were not anywhere near the top of the polls when I wrote that, but they eventually did both win Iowa. And it tells you about the state of a party at that moment, but it doesn't always tell the whole story. I think the story of Mike Huckabee in 2008 was conservative populism. We just weren't paying attention to it.
Well, that is, I talked to my Navy son-in-law the other day, reminded him that in a nation with 150 million or more voters, 6 million people watch cable television on any given night. And so there are about 6 million people who follow sports for a living, and there are about the same number who follow politics for a living. I mean, it's our entertainment, it's our lifeblood, it's our circus, it's our competitive sport. And we like it, and we like polls like this, but it doesn't mean a thing, at least until 4 or 5 of the debates come in. Now, it does mean Trump is the front runner. Does, by the way, another indictment today or this week help him or hurt him, Salena?
You know, I just remind people of 91 October. Nobody knew who Bill Clinton was. Then he goes and gives that really, honestly, a very great speech, very similar to the speech that Donald Trump gave in 2015, where he talks about the American work ethic, about no one feeling and listening to you. Both of them gave a very similar speech. And so I would watch to see who is connecting with people and who's talking about the future. That tends to be where voters go. They're aspirational. They want to be part of something bigger than themselves. They're less inclined to look in the rearview mirror. And I think that is the story of what we will see in November next year, in December, and curving into January when the races or the actual elections, primary elections, are starting to be held.
We'll talk again next week, and we'll get new polls, and it will change every week until after we actually get results. Salena Zito, thank you for everything. Salena Zito, go to salenazito.com. Follow her on Twitter, now X, by the way, rebranded overnight. Follow her on X. That sounds odd, doesn't it? At Zito Salena. I'm on X or Twitter at Hugh Hewitt, and come and join me there as well. I'll be right back.